One of the glaring weaknesses with online church is that it's very easy for the person watching to feel disconnected.
Because on its own, when someone watches your live stream or service recording, they're really just a fly on the wall.
So today we're chatting with the pioneers of online church, Life.Church.
And we'll be aiming to solve this problem. How can we make online church less about programming and more about ministry?
This is how to start an online church ministry with Life.Church. Well, hey there, and welcome to the Pro Church Tools Show. We're here to help you and your church navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm Brady, your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host. It's Alexander Mills.
Hello.
We're also joined by Christina Ross, online host team pastor at Life.Church. Christina, pleased to spend some time together today.
I am thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's start. Tell us a little bit about Life.Church's history with online church, obviously pioneers in that space in so many ways, and then also your role specifically in that arena.
Okay, sure. So for us, we established our church online in 2006. So our mission as a church is to lead people to become fully devoted followers of Christ. And we had been doing that at physical campuses, but we wanted to actually extend that to really the world. And that was the catalyst for Life.Church Online. So that's when we onlined ourselves, if you could say that. And then what we did also was we created this church online platform where we could actually have church. And there was a platform that made sense for church. Like it allowed for Bible verses to be added and message notes and way to interact with the public and have volunteers interact there. And then in 2010, we actually made that platform available to churches around the world, giving it away for free, which was so exciting because it made doing church online much more accessible for, the average church.
Okay, and so your role specifically is online host team pastor. So what is a church online host for Life.Church? What are the responsibilities and what role what does that actually look like?
Sure. Okay. So just for context, at our campuses, we would have a service on Saturday or Sunday. So Life.Church Online, we take that service, the message, we add worship, we add communicators that speak directly to the online community, and then we package that up into a service that runs a little bit more than an hour. And then that service, it kicks off on a Saturday, and then that runs 131 times throughout the week. So that runs all time zones, completely throughout the week. So because it's all time zones, we want to be able to reach everybody. But the bulk of our volunteers, which we call hosts, are in the States, even though they are also globally. So we have lots of those volunteers supporting those services during our week. So I'm actually in upstate New York. So when I think about Eastern time zone, during the day, during the evening, on the weekends, we have services where if a guest actually attends, they'll be greeted by and supported by our volunteers, which we call hosts. So that's what our hosts do in part. And essentially, they are volunteers that at some point said, hey, I want to be a part of what God is doing through Life.Church Online. They may have clicked a button during one of our services to say, I'm interested. Or some of our people are actually a part of campuses, but want to also be a part of, this online community. And what they do is they commit maybe an hour or so a week to jumping on and praying for people, encouraging them, welcoming them to church. Some of our hosts actually respond to just email requests that have come through for people that maybe have questions about Life.Church, questions about life, or specific prayer requests. And so our hosts are responding in love, encouraging them, praying with them, and then thinking through our mission to lead people to Jesus, but also to lead them closer to Jesus. So they might be sharing resources or support or helping them take their next step in their faith journey.
So Christina, Life.Church, and you alluded to it already, Life.Church has been so innovative in the digital space, using digital means to share the message of Jesus. Like, we're talking about doing online church in 2006. Like, maybe some of our listeners weren't even born in 2006. Surely I wasn't doing anything very, very useful online in 2006. And equipping churches with this kind of technology in 2010, when you said that, I thought you may have misspoke. I thought you meant 2020, because a lot of churches were working through this for the very first time in 2020, when the entire world was navigating a pandemic for the first time. So Life.Church has this legacy of being innovative in this space. And I want to dig into the practicality of this live interaction between online church hosts and folks who attend church, because I'm a local pastor of a very small little local church. And so part of what I love about the local church is the incarnational nature of it and being embodied with people in real time. Now, that being said, there are all sorts of good and valuable reasons to have church online, because there are a myriad of reasons why folks can't attend in-person services. So the heart of my question is this: on a practical level, what does it look like for, and this is I'm talking real practical here, maybe for folks who haven't seen Life.Church online before, so they don't know what the interface looks like. What does it actually look like for a host to be interacting with folks incarnationally, albeit online, during a live service online?
Okay. So first of all, if you're listening and you want to go see kind of what it looks like, you can go to life.church/online, and you may hit a service that actually is going, or it may be, hey, we're going to have service in a few minutes, but you'll still get to kind of see what it actually looks like. So, okay, so I mentioned we have 131 services running throughout the week. So on a weekend, say a Saturday and Sunday, that's our highest attended services. So what we do is we utilize our Church Online platform in such a way that we open the public chat. So guests that attend those services can actually interact back and forth. During the week, what we do is we actually turn that public chat off, and all churches that use this platform can kind of manipulate the platform and kind of add and take away different features as they see as needed. So then during the week, what we do is we don't have the public chat, but we actually integrate an app called Front, where it gives us a blue chat button, which you would have seen, when you go to your bank account or credit card or whatever, blue chat button. So if a guest comes and they're attending, so on one side, they'll kind of see the message and the worship and everything. And in the bottom right corner, they'll see that blue chat button. And there's a little kind of conversation bubble that says, hey, we'd love to pray for you. So if people click on that blue chat button, on the other side of that are our hosts answering, saying, hey, I'm here. How can I help you? That sort of thing. So they're kind of responding to that blue chat button. So I say that just so you have context that for us, when somebody goes to attend, it may look a little bit different depending on when they go. And part of that is, like you mentioned, that kind of innovation is we're always trying to see like what's going to work a little bit better, what's going to give us the most bang for our buck, be able to reach more people than before. Because initially, I would say about a year ago, all of the services that were supported by our host volunteers were those public chat, which was kind of interacting back and forth. And what we found a little bit was, if you're doing church online, there's a chat, or you've ever been on social media and see the chat, sometimes the chats get hairy. Okay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're not all pretty and like everybody loves Jesus and all those things, and it's okay. We love that, And so what we did was we said, okay, let's try something a little bit different during the week. Let's close the public chat and let's see if people are more eager and more likely to request prayer and engage with that kind of one-on-one environment. And we've actually seen more people reach out for help and support during the week than we had actually expected. So wow. Anyway, so we're constantly kind of looking at it, revisiting it. So let me go back to your question. So this is a really long answer for your question. So let's take kind of the weekend public chat. So you're a guest, you log on to Life.Church/online, and you're attending church. What you'll see is every single one of our hosts And you can, when you kind of log on, you can choose a username. People may choose their name. Sometimes people don't choose anything. And if that's the case, then they don't get to engage in the public chat, but they're choosing some sort of name. And a lot of times it'll be like, I love flowers, or I hate people, or, like any number of things. And you get a sense of, who those guests are with their kind of usernames. So then our host will have like a little, like a badge next to their name that will say host. So in the public chat, you'll know when a host is talking that it's one of our hosts. So what we have our hosts do is, one host is dedicated to just welcoming people, just saying hello, asking people where they're coming from, responding to people that may be chatting in the public chat. And then since our services are, the same throughout the week, what we also do is we create a script based on that first service, a script of, we'll know what worship songs there are. We'll have heard our senior pastor's message. And so we'll have a script for prompts that a host will then copy and paste into the chat. So an example might be, let's worship God as we, what's a song? Jireh, as we remember that our God provides. So it'll be relevant to the actual content for that particular week. And that's just another way to kind of keep some engagement in the chat. Also a way to redirect sometimes, when people are like, saying off the wall things and it's like, hey, let's worship right now. So that's kind of some of the things that our hosts do. In addition, at any point, a guest on that public chat can request prayer. So once they click the button saying request prayer, that will send them into a one-on-one chat feature with one of our hosts. So on the back end, our host will see a request come through and they'll get to accept that request from upstate New York, this person that's requested prayer. It'll send them into that one-on-one chat. And then our host will be able to interact, ask folks how they need prayer. And then that chat will go on until that guest leaves the actual chat. So that's for that hour and change that, our guests are there, not our guests, our hosts. They're taking prayer requests. They're getting to interact with each other. So they're getting to, kind of process through, hey, this is what's happening in the public chat. Do we need to take any action? Do we need to mute somebody if there's something explicit? So they're getting to build community. At the same time, they're getting to support all of the guests coming through and actually attending.
So I think what's really fascinating to me is that you have like this A/B testing almost going on, where you have the public chat on the weekends, you've got the private chat on the weekdays, and it sounds like trying to kind of like extract what are the lessons and the pros and cons of each configuration. Because I think to me, one of the benefits of a public chat is that, hey, like, look at all this social proof in a sense. Look at all these people that are here. There's something happening here. It's not just me like on a webpage all by myself. There are people all around the world or all around this specific community or region that are connecting. Perhaps the downside of that is that distracting. You're keeping an eye on the chat. When I think about gaming and Twitch, like so much of what's happening is, yes, you're watching the game, but you're also watching the chat. And so if the chat is really active, does that distract or take away from the online service that maybe I'm supposed to be focused on? I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So it's a great question, but it's like one of those qualitative things that it's like, is that the thing? It's hard to really pinpoint. The one thing that we do see with the public chat is we have a lot of regulars. And, even though there may be, some people that are a bit distracting, that's not the majority of it, really, if I'm being honest. For the most part, it's people that are excited to be there, interested to be there. And when it does get a little bit hairy, we do try to, kind of take care of that by maybe direct messaging them and trying to take that person offline, not offline, but in a more private conversation to start to hear, what is it that they're struggling with? Why are they frustrated? Whatever that thing is. And so what's great is we see community building with those public chat services. So for example, somebody that comes to mind is, they use the username. It's something like Seals Cram or something. It's something like that. It's a combination of some words. They're there frequently. And when they jump on the public chat, they're so happy to be there. They know the host name. And so they're like, oh my gosh, Christina, it's so nice to see you. So there's so many positive things happening in those chats that it wasn't as if on balance, it was more negative than positive. It was more like, all right, let's see if we can engage more people by trying something a little bit different.
Well, so I'm curious how you, and I assume this is part of your role at the church, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but how do you build up hosts to be equipped to deal with the type of communication that they will encounter in a live chat online? Because we all know that when we get on the internet, we get behind a computer screen or behind a username like Seals Cram, you end up saying things and behaving in a way that you just would not in person. So I'm sure you're encountering things in the live chat that you wouldn't encounter usually during a church service in person. And so what is the process for building up your hosts as people and as leaders to be able to be equipped to navigate those situations as they're happening in real time?
Yep, that's a great question. So one of the things I started doing, so I've been in this role. I've been a pastor with Life.Church for over 10 years, but I've been in this role just under a year. And so one of the things I wanted to do immediately was kind of overhaul the orientation process. Because I think you nailed it. It's so important to properly equip these people. Oh gosh. And I'm getting teary-eyed because I just get so excited about what we get to do. So one of the things I did is I kind of just rewrote our mission on Host Team. So I want to share with you our mission. So it's to create an environment where we demonstrate the love of Jesus to our guests and lead them to become fully devoted followers of Christ. Dang it, I'm getting so emotional.
It's so good.
So just for a little bit more context, I'm from upstate New York, and nobody knows Jesus in upstate New York. In fact, for the longest time, Albany, New York was the #1 most post-Christian city in the nation. And it's like, that's the worst list that you could possibly be on. And yet over the last few years, over the last like 10 or so years, we've crept down on that list because more people are finding Jesus. And that's in part to our church being there, but it's all of our churches collectively. It's what God is doing in the local church, the hope of the world, and He's changing that dynamic in our community. So then when they invited me to be a part of this online community, I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody knows Jesus in the world. Not nobody, but man, the opportunity is massive. And so I'm like, yes, like how crazy that I could be a part of reaching people in Guam, So, okay, so back to my team. So I get fired up when I start talking to new volunteers because I love that, they're being obedient in using their gifts and talents for the kingdom of God. They're doing what God wants us to do by serving, but what they get in response is so blessed when they get to see that God will use them to love people, to help them feel welcome, to help them feel accepted, but also to not leave them where they're at, to bring them to this new place. So just in terms of equipping our hosts, the first thing I want to do is help them understand what they're about to be a part of, that it's huge. And whether their job is just to welcome people in the chat, awesome. That could be the thing that turns somebody's life around. In fact, we had a gal, Tracy. Tracy was relatively new to faith. She had checked out Life.Church online, I don't know, maybe it was a month ago or whatever, and she was in the public chat and she talked a little bit. Well, she came back the next week because she liked the message, and one of her hosts remembered her name. And it wasn't because it was her username, but they remembered her name, and she was blown away. And it made her feel so special that in a sea of, hundreds of people, somebody would know her. Well, guess what? She's a host now because she was so inspired and she wants to be that for other people. So it's important that our hosts know the impact and the import of what they're saying yes to. Okay, so here's the other part. So I can see your faces now. It's very personal, even though we're on a computer. Seeing somebody's face immediately makes it personal, but in our environment, we never see their face. And so here's what I tell my hosts is, I know every single person I'm orienting if I walked into their house, they would treat me amazingly. They would offer me a drink. They would offer me the best seat in the house, maybe something to eat. They would introduce me to their family. Because, of course, anybody we're inviting into our house, our guest, we're going to treat really, really well. That's exactly the filter through which I want our hosts to see every single guest they interact with, because we don't know if we're going to get one chance with that person or if they're going to be a regular. And so I want them to see, even if the handle is I love space, I want them to see I love space as my guest, not some generic guest, but as my guest. And in that moment, how can I make I love space feel like $1 million, feel like not only do I care about them, but I'm an extension of God, and God loves them so much and wants so much for that individual. And so that's the filter through which, and that's part of my mission our mission statement is we want to create this environment where we demonstrate the love of Jesus. And we know Jesus, he accepted people, he met them where they were at, but he didn't leave them there. And that's what I want our hosts to be able to do with our guests. Now, it's easy for me to say that on an orientation, but it is so important that I keep that in front of my hosts all the time. So one of the things I do, so I have a team of about 400 people. I send videos every single week, kind of vision videos to, maybe share a story of what God is doing, or just to keep that personal feeling in front of them, because it can feel impersonal when, again, you're just seeing words, you're just seeing, the platform and usernames. And so it's important that I continue to push on that side of it, so that I'm always reminding my volunteers, man, what they do makes a difference.
So you mentioned 131 services throughout the week, and they're not on demand because there are live hosts that are on most, if not all of those. I wanted to dig more into the actual online church programming. You mentioned that there is a recording that goes on, so I'm presuming that the same service plays 131 times. It's Pastor Craig or the main speaker and the worship at the beginning. That's correct?
Yep.
Okay, and so then what other elements are part of this online church program that runs for roughly an hour? Are there people at the beginning? Are there other elements beyond worship and the actual message? How does it all tie together?
Yes. So if you're at one of our campuses, the framework is the same, no matter which campus, no matter, which service you go to. So it's the service opens with worship. There's the local campus pastor, or maybe just kind of a fill-in communicator that kind of bridges the gap between worship and the message. There'll be a time for giving. And so that communicator is kind of talking through that. And then every single message ends with a call to Christ. So an opportunity for people to commit their lives to Christ. Typically, that's our senior pastor that's leading through that. But then on the heels of that, in person, that communicator, that campus pastor is going to come up and then invite people, if they want to make that commitment, to raise their hands. And then they'll kind of conclude, pray with people, conclude, and then kind of dismiss. So in our online environment, it's the exact same framework, only it's just a different communicator. It's our online communicator team that's kind of bridging those two gaps. So the second service starts. Sometimes we may have a kind of a buffer video on the front end, but typically there'll be a looping video that says service starts soon. And then once 11 o'clock hits, we're opening with Actually, now that I say that, I do think sometimes we'll have one of our online communicators intro it, just a short intro, and then it's into worship, followed by our online communicators speaking directly to our online community. And the value there is we're helping our people take next steps that are going to be appropriate for our online community. And that's even though we have next steps that mirror the in-campus, still might be a little bit different, kind of the method for them taking those next steps. So That online communicator would also talk through giving and encourage people to take that next step, and then open it up to the message, which is the same for folks in campus. And then same thing on the back end is, while Pastor Craig is doing that kind of call to Christ, then our online communicators come on the back end of that. And sorry, let me take a step back for a moment. So one of the features that I hadn't mentioned in when the service is playing online, we also have what we call moments that we are scheduling into the actual service. So those moments, there's not a ton of them, but it'll be like a welcome. It'll be in line with what the communicator is talking about. Like, let's say they're talking about serving, or they're talking about finding what we call life groups of people that get together with God at the center. So then there'll be a moment that happens at the same time that a guest can click on to take that next step. So same thing when it comes to the salvation bit. When the communicator's kind of picking up on our senior pastor, inviting people to make a decision to follow Jesus, there's a moment, a button that says, I want to give my life to Christ. When they click that, it basically will tally the number of hands, and which is so exciting, especially for our hosts, to see that towards the end of that message, people are actually making that decision to follow Jesus. That's part of our heart and our mission. And so then that communicator will be kind of talking through, celebrating people that have made that decision, praying with people, and then just like in campus, kind of sharing any next steps, and then dismissing people from that particular service.
Excellent. Okay, I want to ask more now about these online communicators. What are some of the cues, or even just like the points that they're wanting to hit each week in that intro, in the in-between element, and at the end? And you mentioned next steps. That's something that's very important to us here at our company. What next steps specifically on online church, you said maybe sometimes they're a bit different, are you continually emphasizing?
Sure. Okay, so let me think. So I say all that, and we have occasionally made some adjustments for things like Easter or that sort of thing. So when it comes to the online communicators, we have a team of them. They're at different places. And so sometimes what those communicators are doing may be highlighting what's happening in a particular location that they're filming at. So for example, I'm trying to think. So for Easter this past year, we did something a little bit different where we filmed it live. Now, typically we're not filming those live. Maybe it's 50-50. Maybe 70-30, where like 30% of it is live. So typically they're filming it a little bit earlier, kind of knowing what direction we're going in with the weekend service, because we'll know the series and we'll know kind of the topic. And so we have some indication of what's going to happen on the weekend. So with Easter, they filmed at a few different locations. And in that moment, what our communicators tried to do is help the online community actually feel like they are part of the whole. So help them feel a little bit more like it's not just online and then in person, but try to blend the two maybe a little bit. So that was specific and intentional there. I would say there isn't anything necessarily beyond just helping people feel welcome, helping people feel connected, feel like this is their home, this is their church. Because for us, most of the people that are attending online aren't also a part of a campus. You know, I mean, certainly we have people at campuses that they go on vacation and so they attend online, you know, as kind of like a replacement. For the most part, the people that are attending online that are regulars, like this is their home. And so our communicators are communicating to those people as if, hey, we know this is your home. We want to help you grow in your faith. And so our communicators are constantly leading towards whatever that next step is. So when I think about next steps on a campus, which is what you mentioned, it's for us, we keep it simple. It's, we want people to attend church regularly. You know, it's a part of, don't forsake the assembling of the brethren. And that is so King James. And side note, one of the tips for hosts communicating online is don't be churchy, which is what I just did. Okay. So don't do what I just did.
You don't typically use the word brethren in day-to-day conversation?
No, I don't. I can't even believe I said that. I wanted to stop myself, but I just couldn't.
No, it's good. It's hidden in there in your heart. It can't help but get out.
It is. It's so entrenched. Oh my gosh. So next steps is attending church regularly. So that's certainly something that we would talk about online as a communicator. But it's serving, it's finding godly community. And so just to go back to serving on a campus is pretty simple. It's serving with the kids, or it's opening doors or making coffee. In our environment, serving looks like being a part of the host team, which is what I lead. It also could be, we have a whole kind of different segment with social media. And so people can serve with our social media team. And then also they can serve by being a life group leader. So we encourage godly community through what we call life groups. Life groups are groups of people that get together with God at the center. They're all a little bit different, maybe a little different focus. But for us, we have about 600 life groups. And so at any point, we encourage our folks to search through our database of life groups. And we have short links to get people there. And those life groups, some of them meet online. I mean, the majority of them meet online. But something we've been doing this last year is encouraging people to start what we call watch parties. So it's in your community, opening your home or going to a coffee shop and actually watching service together. So that's something that when people go and search for a life group, they'll be able to search by location and find that, in the Philippines, there's a watch group taking place in this particular area. So it's cool because we have life groups in, I want to say 55 different countries, but then again, also online. And so there's something for everybody. And we want to continue to encourage people, not just to find community that way, but to continue starting those groups. So we continue to match the need because tons of people are looking for that community. Another next step, and this one was interesting. I was excited to hear about this when I joined this particular team. In person, we do baptisms, once a quarter at a campus. Well, we also facilitate baptisms online, and it's been so exciting to watch those actually happen. So what we do, if somebody's interested in getting baptized, we send them a link, they fill out a form, they tell us a little bit about their story. So then what we do is we set up a Zoom call where we as a pastor will talk through the baptism and baptize them kind of verbally. But then on their end, they need to arrange for a body of water and a friend or a family member that's a believer to actually dunk them. And it is so cool. Gabby is actually one of my volunteers. She lives in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and she was so excited to get baptized. So she's got an in-ground pool in the back. And she, along with tons of family and friends on Zoom all around the world, watched her get baptized. And it was so cool because all of these people that wouldn't have been able to physically attend her baptism got to be there and got to celebrate. The second she came out of that water, like it was madness, people screaming and cheering. And it was so special that even though she isn't physically a part of one of our campuses, that didn't limit her ability to take what was the most important next step for her.
I'm so thankful that you're sharing these stories with us because, we mentioned the innovation of Life.Church, but I could not have imagined that we would get to this point in this conversation where I'm hearing you tell the story about how you have innovated and facilitated really meaningful spiritual practice to the point of hosting online baptisms in what sounds to me as a Christian and as a pastor as like a pretty meaningful way of doing that from a distance. During the aforementioned pandemic, there was a couple in our church who had a baby, and it was really important to them because we didn't know when the end was not in sight, and so we didn't know when we were going to be able to gather in person again, and it was important to them to dedicate their baby. That's a practice we do in our church, and so I facilitated an online dedication of their baby through Zoom, of course, and it really there was a benefit to that in the sense that there were folks and family members from all over the continent that were able to attend that event because we held it online, who would not have been able to attend in person. So there is there is something to that. And what I'm hearing in everything that you're saying, Christina, is that you are paying such particular attention to the fact that online church cannot be a carbon copy of in-person services. It requires a certain measure of catering to the nature of doing it at a distance to the online platform. You are making all sorts of changes and choices to cater to the folks who are meeting online who will not meet in person, and enabling them to take these next steps and take them well from a distance. And so I'm going to ask you a question on behalf of all of our listeners who I know are wanting to know, because you mentioned, and we know this of Life.Church, every service ends in this salvation moment. That's a really big value to you. And so I'd like you to tell us about how you are facilitating that next step online. When somebody during that moment clicks the button and says, I want to give my heart to the Lord, or whatever verbiage you use at Life.Church, how are you leading them into taking that next step and then following up with them from a distance in what could be defined as, one of the most important decisions of their life?
It's so interesting. So like I said, I had, oh, dang it, the tears are coming again. So, you can't stop it. Yeah. So been a part of a campus, forever. And what is so crazy to me, so in person, you assume, it is personal. You get to see people, you get to see people's hands go up and everything. But it's so funny because every week I would see people's hands go up. And at our campuses, what we would do is we don't pursue people in this way. We kind of tell them, hey, this is what's available. If you're ready, you come talk to us, because, and I don't know where you guys are from, but upstate New York, like people are super closed off. So, you got to give them a little bit of space to be able to, if they feel good and they want to open up, to be able to share some of those things, So at the campus, we might say, hey, if you made that decision, we've got a few pastors that would love to talk to you more about it. We've got maybe a group to kind of walk you through what it means to be a follower of Christ. We've got resources, all these sorts of things. So the second I joined the online team, I had some assumptions, and, until you do online, you just don't know, and I was judgy a little bit, even though, they actually hired me. So I thought it was going to be a little bit more impersonal, but it blows my mind how much more open people are in this online environment. They're not closed up. I mean, certainly some people may not engage with us, but because there is such a strong level of anonymity when they're online, they can air their dirty laundry with no fear of, I'm going to be embarrassed, or, I may never see them, And so it's just, they're more apt to be open and to kind of share what's going on. So it makes it really great to be able to pray with people. I have prayed with more people online than I ever did at a campus. And part of that is just, people are just a little bit more apprehensive to share. Okay. So to your actual question, when it comes to salvation, it's very similar in that, so our senior pastor will share the gospel message. They'll get an opportunity to click that button. And what's cool is that that's just such a concrete step. It's not the button, it's their decision to, commit their lives to Christ. Dang it. It's so exciting to see that darn number go up, though, Yeah. And sometimes people will say it in the chat. They'll raise their hand or, drop the hand emoji or whatever. And so what we do in those moments, it's similar to the campus thing, is we'll give them a link. Or we'll say, okay, this is your next step. Now, what you need to do. So it's still, we're asking them to take the next step instead of kind of us saying, okay, now we're going to direct message you and talk you through everything you need to know. Is we're saying, okay, you need to now take this next step. And so what we do is we lead them to kind of this landing page where it's got everything that they need to know about what it means to be a follower of Christ. But what's awesome is that a lot of those people that made that decision, they'll click the one-on-one chat, and we'll in the moment get to talk with them and just celebrate with them and say, man, it is awesome. Don't you know all of heaven is celebrating with you right now because you clicked that little hand button, and it's just so cool to be able to spend some time with them in that moment. But that kind of conversation is not the end all. What we want them to do is to take those next steps to let us know that they made that decision by filling out the particular form. And then that landing page, it talks about, how, man, talking to God, that you actually have access to talk to your creator. So it talks about what it means to pray. It talks about what it means to read God's word, and just, kind of just some of the basics of what it's going to take for them to continue in this journey of faith.
Yeah, that's outstanding. So I think, to me, one of the weaknesses that I've always perceived in a live stream or in simply rebroadcasting a message that was previously recorded is that it can create this kind of like fly on the wall POV for folks that are coming across that stream or that video, where they're like, hey, there was something happening in person and it would have been really cool to be there. I'm not, and I'm just kind of like watching as this fly on the wall from afar. And one of the through lines, if I was to draw any through this conversation, that I think is applicable to everyone listening, is that all of your efforts are, in a way, there to make the online attender feel like, oh, I'm actually part of this. There are people that have considered me. There are people that are here to interact with right now, live, even though I'm not in person. And that does, I think, have a dramatic effect. With that being said, these online hosts, you're entrusting this really important process to volunteers, which, there are 400 of them, it sounds like. That's a lot of volunteers, and perhaps logistically that's what's realistic rather than staff. But have there ever been any reservations, we're just trusting this to a volunteer, a person that is in a way the front line standing in for our church?
Yeah, that is a great question. So let me go back to our orientation. So the orientation process is, and I do every single orientation that I can, because I want to get eyes on those people for exactly what you mentioned, because we've got all sorts of different people signing up, and there's a background check that they have to get through, but there's hey, how does this person actually communicate? And so when what we're doing is we're doing a Zoom orientation. So I'm getting an opportunity to hear their story a little bit, to see, where are they at in their faith? Not that we require everybody to be, seasoned believe. We're all at a different place in our journey, and God can use all of us. But there is a threshold for who is going to work in our online environment. So some of it is just that kind of nuanced. As I meet them, I may just have a thing where maybe there's a check, and I think, what, I'm not sure host team is right for you, but we'll find a spot for you. There's going to be somewhere where you can use your gifts and talents. There have certainly been, and we are not immune to making stupid decisions and to making mistakes and having to correct it. So there was this one host that I had, and I had a little bit of a check about, I didn't think that she was going to work as a host, but I don't know. I was like, I'm going to err on the side of let's give it a whirl. And man, it backfired. Okay. And she was not the right fit, lovely young lady. She would have done very well at a campus. And so where we ended is, listen, you have gifts and talents that can and should be used in the kingdom, but this is just not the right place for you, because just like you said, our environment is a very high trust environment. So if I can't trust hosts to follow simple directions, to follow our guidelines, and if you're going Rambo and you're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, this is not the right place for you. So, okay. So then in the orientation, go through a lot of things. I talk vision, I talk details. And then one of the last things I do is I talk about how to pray for people, because every single host is going to be praying with a guest, and not everybody feels equipped or knows how to do that, And so I spent a lot of time on that training, helping people understand the importance of it, that we take it very seriously, that the fact that we get to go to the creator of the universe on behalf of people is a big deal. And that's something that we need to steward well, So I talk through the process, at length, and the why and the how. We give them lots of resources, but guess what? There's a test. So they cannot pass into actually serving on a host team until they take that test. And the test, it's simple, but what we will ask them to do is actually respond to a few prayer requests. and they'll actually have to type into a field, and then that test gets submitted to a few of our admin team members, hosts, and then they'll evaluate it and they'll provide some feedback, or they may say, hey, listen, this person, and sometimes it's as simple as, we interact with people in English. And so sometimes it may simply be that somebody is unable to interact effectively in English. And that's okay. Again, we can find a place for them. There are tools that we encourage people to use, but if for whatever reason they're not able to utilize those tools effectively, then that may be a reason that host team is not going to be the right fit. But that's kind of like that, hey, before we actually get you on the field, we need you to pass this. And then so we have 400 volunteers, but we have a hierarchy of leadership. So every single service that I mentioned that has volunteers assigned to them, they have what we call a host team leader that oversees that team. So they're the ones that are really accountable for leading an effective service. And then, so I think essentially it's maybe 90 of our services that have teams assigned to them. So then of those teams, we have community leaders that then oversee groups of our host team leaders. And then we have 5 coaches that oversee groups of community leaders. So there's a lot of support. There's a lot of kind of pastors and shepherds of all of our 400 people, because for sure, me leading 400 people sounds impossible, but it is possible with those trusted high capacity leaders that have done it, they have served faithfully, and now they know how to lead other volunteers.
I think what you're demonstrating here is something every church can put into place, which is when you want someone to serve in a position, you have to give them the ability to pick up the skills and demonstrate those skills. Mm-hmm. I think it takes a lot of time up front, right? Anytime you are resourcing someone to step into a role, you have to do a bunch of upfront work to then save time on the back end. So you work harder now to prepare these resources, to equip them so that then they can run with that role and in that position. And I think because there's that difficulty, often we just default to figure it out on the go. Then people aren't able to pick up the skills you want. They're not demonstrating what you'd hope because they're not just intuitively figuring everything out as if you were doing it yourself. And then we assign, fault to that person. They weren't able to pick this up. They just didn't have what it takes. You have standard operating procedures, guides, orientation, whatever verbiage you want to use for that. Then you're actually providing opportunity for them to demonstrate those skills in those evaluations, in those tests beforehand, so that when they're finally in those positions, they know that they're able to do what needs to be done, and you're confident that they are able to do it as well. But there's a nitty-gritty question that I still have, Christina, which is simply this. Emojis in the chat from the hosts, yay or nay?
Yay, yay. One of the things I tell, and it's in my orientation, is in the do's and don'ts, is do have a personality. Okay, in our environment, when people see a blue chat button, they're assuming on the other side is a bot. Don't be a bot.
That's true.
Be a person that's fun and funny and emoji. Now, don't blow it up with emojis. This is not like hieroglyphs. It can get ridiculous. But that's an easy way to be able to show people that, you're a real person.
Okay, so dovetailing off of that question, different generations use different emojis in different contexts. So
there are some emojis that are just off limits.
But what I'm saying is some emojis you think this is a fine emoji, and then you're like, wait, that means what to you?
Yes.
Okay, I want to thank you. I want to thank you right now because I just realized what I have missed in my do's and don'ts of my orientation. I need to add emojis not to use. So thank you for that.
No fruits or vegetables.
There's no reason to ever use this emoji. Yeah. Just stay away.
Good
and
call.
don't say brethren either.
Yeah, right. And brethren, right? That's the slang. We don't need to use the insider language. We're all progressing. We're all people in process, moving forward. Okay.
That's right.
Sticky situations in the chat. We've touched on that briefly. I think there are some obvious ones. Sometimes we use the term if someone is vandalizing the chat. Right? There's no reason to keep that up and entertain it. If someone's vandalizing real property, we remove the vandalism. If someone's vandalizing the digital property, we remove it. But then there are the in-between really tricky situations. Someone might come to you in crisis. someone might come to you and ask like, hey, what does Life Church believe about this polarizing issue? In those two instances, someone's in crisis, perhaps they're mentioning, threats to themselves or others, or, mental health crisis, or in like tricky theological questions. What are the directives for the team hosts?
That's a great question. So service is an hour. We don't have time to unpack, why does God allow evil in the world? So when it comes to some of those things, what's cool about our Church Online platform is it does allow for, if we see somebody in the chat, we can direct message them. So we just click, it's kind of like a 3-dot, right click, that sort of thing, and take them into a one-on-one. And when people are asking some of those heavy hitting questions, it's not for, I have no expectation that my hosts are fielding those. So one of the things we do have is we have this link to Calendly. I don't know if you guys have heard of Calendly. It's basically, it syncs with our pastors. And so we have a way for our guests to actually schedule a time to meet with a pastor.
That's awesome.
And so, in fact, today, after I get off this call, I have, I think, 4 meet with the pastors. Wow. And so that's just randomly people across the world wanting to reach out because maybe they have tough questions or maybe they just need somebody to talk to. And so we encourage our hosts to offer that to them. And I think that's for them makes it easy because they don't feel like they have to know every single thing about the Bible or whatever it is. But then also it makes the guests feel like, oh, so I don't see a pastor on here, but there's somebody that's actually available to me. The other, to your other point, so I just have to share this one thing. So sticky situations in the chat. We get all sorts of people that are attending, and actually, I don't think I mentioned this, but one of the things we do is our heart is evangelism. We want to reach more people. And so what we do is we go where people are. So when people are searching they're struggling with anxiety or they're stressed or they're depressed, we will actually put ads in those spaces online that say, hey, it looks like you're having a hard time. Why don't you try church? So I think it's like 70 or 80% of the people that are actually coming to church are people that have clicked on our ads because they had some sort of felt need.
80%?
What?
It's insane. It is insane. Now, you know
I
what?
need to see those ads.
I may be lying. Now I'm nervous because
even
it is
more than 50 is crazy. So.
No, and it's for sure more than 50. So it's crazy that so many people will come there. And so I say that because when I orient our hosts, I'm telling them, listen, we have no idea what people are going through. We have no idea. The people that are engaging in church during your time may be a regular, maybe people that love Jesus, maybe a person that's never heard the name Jesus before, except their cousin Jesus around the corner, So like it is so brand new for them. And that's the filter through which, when I talked about, that's our guest. Let's steward that really well because we don't know if we're going to have another chance with that. Dang it, here come the tears again. So I have to tell you really quick about Mary. So Mary came to Life Church Online, and I don't know if it was through an ad or whatever it was, but this woman was broken. And so when she logged on for the very first time, her username was something like unlovable. And let me tell you, in the chat, she was a beast. Okay, so she didn't just identify as unlovable. She made herself so clearly unlovable, but she was there, And one of the hosts during that service was Sharon. So the thing is Sharon, the second she saw Mary in that chat, Sharon saw herself in this woman because she used to be that person. Dang it. And so even though sometimes it can feel like, oh my gosh, why is this person so frustrating in the chat and they're being such a pain? Sharon went to lengths and lengths to just show Mary that she was loved, that God loved her. And even though she was prickly and, they got into kind of one-on-one chats, she was so difficult. But Sharon was like, I don't care. This girl's not going to scare me away. And she loved her, loved her, loved her. Well, Mary kept coming back. And week after week, Sharon would get so excited because it was like, this is her mission to just break through these walls and these barriers of hopelessness and depression and all these sorts of things. And you know what? God used Sharon. Mary, as is no surprise because our God is amazing, broke down those walls. And Mary made a decision after weeks and weeks and weeks to actually follow Jesus. And Mary actually decided, you know what? I want to serve. And so Mary has now been on our team for years. She is not prickly. She's delightful. But now she's on that chat and she looks for those people that are difficult because she knows what it felt like to be that person. And so she wants to do whatever it takes to demonstrate the love of Jesus to our guests and lead them to become fully devoted followers of Christ. So we've seen it. We've seen that transformation. And that gives us hope that next difficult person, we don't want to just silence them, and just kind of push them by the wayside. We want to remember that we love because he loved us. And so we need to suck it up, okay? Show a little bit more patience and empathy and care and just treat that person as if they're a miracle just waiting to happen.
You know what, Christina, there are plenty of folks, and surely some folks listening to the show today, that are apprehensive of online church. At the risk of it being like a disembodied version of the body. But what you've done today, if anyone got to this point in the show and has heard anything you've had to say, the stories you've shared and the emotion that you've personally brought to the table, which thank you for that. Thanks for having the courage to be vulnerable and honest about that, is proof enough that like you're calling these people by name and you're telling their real story. That's proof enough that like this can be an embodied, incarnational expression of church. We can accomplish this online. It takes work, and you've done such a great job of bringing us into that and pulling the curtain back and showing us like how much work actually goes into being intentional about this. But it can be done. There is real life change going on with real people with real names who are not just being entertained or not just consuming something that's been pre-recorded, but are becoming active participants in the life of faith in a community online, in a community in person, and in their own heart. They're working out their own salvation. And so I just wanted to thank you for bringing that to the table today and sharing all those stories and bringing yourself and all your emotions to prove to us that like this is really happening.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
That's all great. I need to ask about how 80% of people are coming from ads. Like that if there's anything I'm taking away from this. Okay, let's be clear, okay? Life.Church.
You're on a show with a pastor and a pragmatist. So
we're both got the pastor. He just
now.
did the pastor. Now Mr. Pragmatist is stepping in. Okay, so like Life.Church, we know, like biggest church in the world, like close to it, like however you want to quantify that. So what you're saying is most people, whether it's 50 or 80, most people showing up for online church every week are not under the church influence of like, wow, look at this biggest church in the world. Like it's people that are searching in Google. Are we talking AdSense? Like that? Where are these ads showing up?
Okay, so this is gonna blow your mind. So
my mind's already blown. So please continue.
Okay, and when I heard it, my mind was also blown because I didn't realize that's our heart is to reach people for Jesus. So we have to go where people are. So I mentioned anxiety, depression, suicide, explicit content. Okay, if people are going to search, this actually was when we first started this kind of idea of, all right, let's invest some finances in ads. It actually was, if people are looking for porn, they're going to find an ad for Life.Church. We're not posting porn, but it would be like, hey, I see, I don't even know what it would say, but it's like, hey, why don't you try church instead?
Oh, you put some emojis in the chat that I don't know what those are. Yeah.
Well, and we learned we don't do that anymore. Yeah. So that's kind of where it started, but then it evolved into, all right, what is the felt need? What are people struggling with today? So we still do that, but I think the percentage is much less. But it's like if somebody looks something about suicide, then they may see in the top right corner, hey, why don't you try church instead? So literally, we have a person, a gal who is our director of marketing. Part of her role is to invest in these ads. And so we're literally paying money to get to the people that are hurting so that we can tell them, hey, there's a better way. And his name is Jesus.
And on next week's episode, we have Christina from Life.Church talking about the ad strategy of Life.Church.
Honestly, though, the reason I think this is so important is because people will look at the title of this episode. People will, anytime we do a podcast or a video with a highly affluent church, the notion that people bring into the conversation, and I don't even blame them for this, is so much of what they're doing is because their pastor is so well known.
Sure.
People are searching for this pastor, people are searching for this church because they are affluent. No, what we have just learned is that the vast majority of people that are attending these services have no idea, likely, who Pastor Craig Rochelle is, have no idea about YouVersion and Church Online platform and Life.Church and the fact that there's, 178 campuses or whatever the number is today. It's just people that are hurting, searching for purpose, searching for anything. And Life.Church is the church that's saying, yeah, you know what? We're going to take our considerable resources and invest them in this way because we know we can meet a hurting and dying world where they're at. I think one of the best ways that we can kind of wind down this conversation, Christina, is that admittedly, when we hear numbers like 600 small groups, 400 people on staff, 131 services, people can immediately be like, okay, I am part of the 90+% of churches that are 300 people or fewer in the States. This is not applicable to me. I think I would broadly disagree with that the big principles here are applicable. But if you were going to speak to the typical church who is doing some form of online church, and I've been a big critic of just live streaming and nothing else for many, many years pre-pandemic because it was devoid of opportunities for next steps, because it was devoid of intentionality where we're meeting people there and we're just like, hey, watch what we're doing here. You're not a part of it, but just watch what we're doing. So all that to say, what would you say to the small church pastor, the medium, mid-sized church pastor? It's like, what are the biggest lessons that I can enact in my own church?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great question. So I mentioned I'm from upstate New York, and it has been heartbreaking to see small churches closing. There's, lots of states where there's churches on every corner. That's not the case here. So I remember when when life kind of shut down through quarantine and stuff, one of the things I did was I messaged every single church in the area to say, hey, this is free. I'm not trying to sell you something, but if you need a way to do church online, take this church online platform, but again, in New York, everybody thinks you're selling something. So mostly nobody responded, because they're like, who is this crazy woman?
Hey, we're Canadian. Niagara Falls just up the road. So we're serving in a similar context.
So here's kind of my thought, is for us, we had to start somewhere. We didn't start with 600 life groups. We didn't start with, the campus that I was a part of, or still am a part of in upstate New York. When our campus opened, we had 70 people. So you have to start somewhere. You can't just see the where people are at now and think it did not take blood, sweat, and tears, because my brother, it did. And so I think when I think about, just my local church, that maybe they're not doing online yet. My thought is, when I think about the people that don't know Jesus, oh my gosh, I have so many answers. So sorry, let me finish this one answer. My thought is just start doing it, because at the very least, you want to take care of your flock. You've got this group of sheep, and sometimes those sheep don't show up, So for one, if you at least eliminate the reason for them not to attend church, like I'm sick today, and you're like, you're sick, but you could have watched online, at the very least, you can, that's one way to continue taking care of your flock. And the whole online thing, the church, it's actually easier than you think, but I get it. Until you've done it, you don't know. But there's so much support, even within our staff and Life.Church, to be able to utilize those resources. So I would say just rip the Band-Aid off and just do it, because what you're going to find is it gets easier. And one of the gals, I think I mentioned Tracy earlier, that she was the one that came back to church. Well, I actually asked her when I was chatting with her during orientation, I said, hey, do you have a local church that you're going to? And she said, no. And here's why. And if I want people to go to a local church and support what's happening locally, but not everybody does that, and that's totally fine. So I asked her why. And she said, because I'm the only believer in my family. She said, my husband and my son, they don't know Jesus. She had only found Jesus 2 years prior. So she says she watches Life.Church online and she cranks it up, because that means now she is inadvertently making her family attend church. So back to you, local church pastor, okay? You have no idea the impact that you will have. It will be beyond what you see. You'll be able to reach more people for Jesus simply by being online, simply by having the other household members listen to the word that you're bringing that day, listen to the worship that you're doing. So I say go for it, because you have no idea how God is going to use it. And here's the second thing. You've got young people in your church that had these skills. So your fear and apprehension comes from the fact that you're old, like me, and aren't as tech savvy. So I know for me, I've had to learn from the younger generation. And a lot of the people I've been empowering over the course of the last 6 months to do some of the tech aspects online are younger, and it's easy for them and they're excited to do it. So now by me actually continuing this whole thing, I'm able to connect some of these volunteers with their God-given mission. So you got to just find the right people, put them to work, make them do the heavy lifting, because it won't be nearly as heavy for them as it will be for you.
Well, and Life.Church is always so generous with their own resources. You mentioned Church Online Platform, the software where you can host online church that they give away for free. And then also you have a guide, Church Online Hosts, the complete guide. So I think a lot of the things that we've talked about in this conversation are condensed into that PDF that's hosted on open.church. If you just Google Church Online Hosts Life.Church, I'm sure the PDF will come up there, and we're going to link it in the show notes either way. Christina, can't thank you enough for the time and your, again, vulnerability, generosity with your time and spirit. Great to meet you and talk about online church.
Thank you so much.
If you drop any expletives, I'll beep them out as well. So you're safe.
Yeah, perfect.
And we'll probably have to take at least 4 runs at this intro with me saying different variations on the emphases of the title. So